Hello viewers, this is Wagda now taking you through the story of A-level applied mathematics. And this video I'm going to go through the solutions for beginning of term 3 math paper 2 exam of a certain school where I happen to be a teacher. So shall start with question 1. Question 1 says that the position vector of a particle at n time t seconds is given by this expression. Calculate the speed of the particle when t is equal to 3. So first of all, you should realize that this expression is variable because it has this function of t, meaning that as t changes, this position vector also changes, meaning that, so because it is variable, it implies that we are going to use the method of calculus. Calculus means you either differentiate or integrate. Now, because they want speed and they're giving you this expression for displacement, you are going to differentiate. Therefore, you say that velocity is equal to derivative of this displacement or position vector from the origin. So when I differentiate this, I'll come up with this, and when I differentiate this, I'll come up with that. Therefore, when I substitute for t, which is equal to 3, I'll come up with this expression, which gives me 10I and minus 24J. Therefore, I remember that speed is magnitude of velocity, therefore magnitude will be that which is 26. So remember that we have to show these units. In mechanics, an answer is invalid if it doesn't have a unit. So B1 is for the velocity expression, M1 for the substitution, A1 for the vector, M1 for the substitution, A1 for the speed. So that was question 1. Now we shall go to question 2, which says that two events are such that PA is that, PB is that, and PA given B is that. Find A union B and A intersection B complement. So we shall know that probability of A intersection B is equal to probability of B multiplied by probability of A given B. So probability of B is this 0.2 and probability of A given B is 0.1. So in the end we come up with 0.02. Therefore, probability of A union B is probability of A plus probability of B minus probability of A intersection B. When I substitute, probability of A is that, probability of B is that, and probability of A intersection B is that. So in the end, I'll come up with 0.88. Then part B, probability of A intersection B complement is equal to probability of A minus probability of A intersection B. So probability of A is that, B is A intersection B is that, therefore the answer is 0.68. So B1 for getting this intersection, M1 for this substitution, A1 for the output, M1 for the substitution, A1 for the output. So that was question 2. Now we shall go to question 3, which says that an elastic string of natural length 1.2 meters and modulus of elasticity 8 newtons is stretched until the extending force is 6 newtons. Find the extension and the work done. So first of all, this is the formula for force, modulus of elasticity, modulus of elasticity, extension, and natural length. Therefore, we're going to substitute force was given, then modulus of elasticity it was given, original length was given. Therefore, my aim is to make x the subject. So when I make x subject, it will be 0.9, which is the extension. Now we need the work done. Work done is given by the formula. This, so this is modulus of elasticity multiplied by extension squared over 2L, where L is that. So when I substitute, I'll substitute for this, to come up with 2.7 joules. So basically that is what they wanted. M1 is that substitution, B1 for this, the units have to be seen, M1 for the formula, M1 for substitution, A1 for the output. So that was question 3. Now we shall go to question 4, which says that the probability that Bob wins a tennis game is 2/3. He plays 8 games. When you see this, it means that it's a binomial. What is the probability that he wins at least 7 games and Roman 2 exactly 5 games? So at least 7. First of all, you have to know that in this binomial, P is 2/3, Q is 1 minus P, which is 1/3, and N is 8. Therefore, at least 7 means 7 or more, so it will be x equal to 7 plus x equal to 8. So we stop at 8 because N is 8. Then we substitute. Now in this case, this P is not there in the mathematical table, meaning we have to use the binomial formula. This is for this and this is for that. When I simplify, I will be able to come up with 1280 over 6561 as the answer. Then exactly 5 games means probability of x equal to 5, so I'll use binomial formula to come up with 1792 over 6561 as the answer. So M1 is for this substitution, and A1 for another M1 is for adding the 2. A1 is for the output after addition. M1 is for the substitution, A1 is for the output. So that was question 4. Now we shall go to question 5. Question 5 says forces of 7 and 4 newtons act away from a common point. Know that word, away from a common point, and make an angle theta degrees with each other. Given that the magnitude of their resultant is 10.75 newtons, find part A the value of theta, part B the direction of the resultant. So we have to first represent this with a force diagram. So these are the two forces, they're acting away from each other, away from a common point, and the angle between them is theta. The next is to use the parallelogram rule. So you have to reproduce this force here with a dotted line, and also reproduce this force here with a dotted line. We use dotted line to show that this is not a force on its own, it's just a representation of one of the forces on the diagram. Then next we shall fill in the missing angles. So this was theta, which is the same as this corresponding angles, and this is 180 minus theta, angles in a straight line. Then they told us the resultant is 10.75. So B1 will be for that. Now next is to get the value of theta and the direction of the resultant. So by cosine rule we shall be able to come up with that. Therefore the value of theta will be equal to 25.4578 degrees. Then part B, by sine rule we can be able to come up with that as our value of alpha. Therefore the direction of the resultant is 16.2542 degrees to the 4 Newton force, or 9.2036 degrees to the 7 Newton force. So basically that is what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. M1 for the substitution, A1 for the required angle, M1 for substitution, and A1 for the direction. So that was question 5. Now we shall go to question 6. Question 6 says the table below shows the price indices of beans, maize, rice, and meat with the corresponding weights. So these are the price indices and these are the weights. Now what you should realize is that these price indices have already been multiplied by 100 because they are in hundreds. I think you can see 105, 104, 103, meaning that these ones were already multiplied by 100. In other words, the formula used to get this one was price of current year over price of base year multiplied by 100. So they were already multiplied by 100. That is the first thing to note, because sometimes it can be only a ratio, price of the current year over price of the base year, or it can be price of the current year over price of the base year multiplied by 100. So you should be keen with that. Then calculate part A, the value of X given that the price indices of maize in 2007 and 2008 using 2006 as the base year are 112 and 130 respectively. Then part B, weighted price index for 2008 using 2007 as the base year. So we shall start with Roman 1. Roman 1, they told us that this 112 is for 2007 using 26 as the base year, and this 130 is for 28 using 26 as the base year, meaning that this 112 is equal to P price of 27 over price of 28 multiplied by 100. And this one is equal to the price of 2008 over price of 2006 multiplied by 100. So let's first interpret that. So that is that, implying that this is that, therefore also that is that, implying that this is that. Now by chain rule we shall be able to get the value of X, because the value of X is equal to price of 2008 over price of 2007 multiplied by 100. Now if we introduce in the 2006, it means that it will be, we shall first write 2008 over 2006 multiplied by 2006 over 2007. Then we can substitute and be able to come up with the answer which they wanted. So M1 is for substitution, A1 is for the output. Now for part B, they asked for weighted price index for 2008 using 2007 as the base year. Now weighted price index, when they don't specify, remember there are two, there is weighted aggregate and weighted average. Now when they don't specify whether they want average or aggregate, always get weighted average price index. So in this case they didn't specify, meaning that they want weighted average price index. So we shall come here and get the weighted average price index. So I'm putting the 100 inside this bracket because the values were show that 100 was already multiplied to get the price index. So I'll come and substitute and then simplify to come up with the answer which they want. So B1 for M1 for substitution, B1 for the outputs both, and A1 for the final answer. So that was question 6. Now we shall go to question 7, which says a particle of weight 20 newtons is placed on a rough inclined plane at an angle of 40 degrees to the horizontal. The coefficient of friction between the plane and the particle is a quarter. When a horizontal force P is applied on the particle, it rests in equilibrium. Calculate the value of P. So the first thing to do is to make a sketch of what is given. Then we know that the weight was 20 newtons, so you come and put the weight acting vertically downwards. Then resolve the weight into the components parallel to the plane and also perpendicular to the plane. Then you also have to put the normal reaction area. And then the horizontal force which was said, also show it there, and resolve it in two components parallel to the plane and also a component perpendicular to the plane. Then next is to know the direction of motion. So this particle acceleration is 0, meaning it's at the point of sliding downwards. So when they don't specify whether the particle is at the point of sliding downwards or upwards, and they just say that it rests in equilibrium, just know that it's at the point of sliding downwards. Therefore, because it's at the point of sliding downwards, friction will act up the plane and it will be mu r. So B1 for the correct force diagram drawn using a ruler. Now next is to resolve parallel to the plane and perpendicular to the plane. So parallel to the plane, sorry, perpendicular to the plane, shall get r being equal to these two. and parallel to the plane, we shall get these two forces being equal to this. So let's do that. So resolving perpendicular to the plane, shall get r equal to that. Then resolving parallel to the plane, shall be able to get this. But we already know that r is that, so we shall come and substitute, and also know that mu is a quarter. It was given in the question. So realize that now we have only one unknown. So when I will simplify and be able to collect like terms and then make p the subject, and that would be the answer. So basically that is what they wanted. So M1 for resolving not vertically. It should be this one resolving perpendicular to the plane, and this one resolving parallel to the plane, and this one is for substituting, this one is for getting the value of p. Then question 8 says, a uniform rod LM of weight W rests with L on a smooth plane PO of inclination 25 as shown in the diagram. The angle between LM and the plane is 45 degrees, as you can see it here. What force parallel to PO applied at M will keep the rod in equilibrium? Give your answer in terms of W. So the first thing to do is to show the forces on the diagram. So let's first redraw the given diagram. Next is to show the forces. We shall begin with the weight, which acts vertically downwards. Now this angle is 70. How does the 70 come about? We are going to, if we draw a horizontal line here, you realize that this angle is equal to this angle because they are alternating. So you have seen that this is now 25. Now because the whole of this is 45, it implies that the remaining angle is 20. So after showing that knowing that that is 20, you realize that this one forms a right angle triangle at this point. Therefore, if this is 20, it implies that the remaining angle will be 70. The next is to show normal reaction at this point of contact. Remember, they told us this plane is smooth. As long as the surface is smooth, it is only normal reaction which exists. If it is rough, then there will also be friction. Then they told us that there is a force parallel to PO, so we'll come and draw it and let that force be F. So because these two lines are parallel, it implies that this angle is the same as this angle, alternating angles. This angle is 90. Therefore, I'll come and take moments about L. So we don't know the length of the rod, so let it be 2L. Therefore, taking moments about capital L will be that. So how does it come about? Remember, the formula for moment is FD sine theta, where F is the force, D is the distance from the pivot to the point where the force originates from, and theta is the angle between the force and the rod. Therefore, if I look at this W is the force, so it is there. Then D is the distance from the pivot up to the point where the force originates from, and it will be L because it's the midpoint. Then theta is the angle between the force and the rod, which is 70. That is for F. That is for W. What about for F? Force is F. The distance from the pivot to the point where the force originates from is 2L. That's why there is 2L there. Then the angle between the force and the rod is 45. That's why there is 45 there. So next is to make F the subject, and that's what they wanted. So B1 for the correct force diagram drawn using a ruler, M1 for taking moments on the left hand side, right hand side, and a 1. So that was question 8. Now we shall go to question 9. It says a continuous random variable x has a cumulative distribution function given by capital Fx, which is equal to that. Determine the value of k, and part B, sketch the graph of fx, capital Fx. So now for cumulative, we don't integrate. That's the first thing you need to remember. For cumulative, we only substitute. For example, if you look at this 0 is the same as this 0, meaning that when I substitute this 0 here and this 0 here, they will be equal. But when I equate the two, I realize that the k cancels because it will be 0. So that one doesn't work. What about 2? When I put this 2 is the same as this 2, meaning that when I put this 2 here and I support this 2 here, they will be equal. But when I equate, you realize that this k will cancel. So that one doesn't work. What about this one? 3 and 3. Meaning that when I put this 3 here and I can equate it to this 3 here. So that one works because k remains. So that is what we are going to use. So you come and say that f3 is equal to that and is equal to 1. Therefore k will be equal to a third. Then part B, they wanted you to sketch the graph, so you have to get the value of f2, because f3 you already know that it's equal to 1. Therefore f2 we don't know it, but so you have to get it, which is equal to 2/3. After getting it, now we shall sketch our graph. The first thing to do is to draw the axes and label them. Then from there we shall go and look at the extremes. So when x is 0, f is 0, and when x is 2, we have seen that f is 2/3. So we are going to draw those, to put those marks. So 2 and 2/3. So I think you realize that this is a curve. Now how do you know that it is of this shape? Why is it not of this shape? For you to know, you look at the coefficient of x squared. So the coefficient of x squared is positive. I think you realize this is positive, meaning that whenever the coefficient of x squared is positive, the shape has to be in this form. And whenever the coefficient of x squared is negative, the shape has to be in this form. So for this first interval, the coefficient is positive, so it has to be in that form. What about for the other interval? The other interval coefficient is negative, meaning it has to be in the other form, which you have already seen. So we shall come and put the boundary lines, then we draw our curve. I think we realize that now the shape has changed because this coefficient is negative. Then lastly, there's something you should realize, is that this interval does not show where to end. It is just x greater than or equal to 3, meaning that it goes up to infinite. Therefore you have to also show that on your graphs. How? By putting that arrow. So always don't forget this arrow. It shows that the values are continuing until infinite. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for substituting and equating to 1, A1 for the value of k, B1 for the first part of the graph, B1 for the second part of the graph, B1 for the last part of the graph. Then now we shall go to question 10. So question 10 says that the table below shows the marks obtained by 100 students in a mathematics test. These are the marks and these are the corresponding number of students. Calculate the mean mark, that is part A. Part B, draw a cumulative frequency curve or an ogive and use it to find the median mark, and 2, the range of the middle 40% of the marks. So the first thing to do is to tabulate your values, which will be used to answer the questions. So for the column of marks, we are going to put there these very values which are given here. So what you should remember is that now, because of these inequalities, it implies that the classes are the same as the class boundaries. So what we are going to do, we are going to combine those two columns for class and class boundary into one column. How is it done? By eliminating the inequality. The next is the column of frequency. Now the column of frequency, we put there the values of this number of students. So we shall come here and put those values. and we have to get the total. When you add all those ones, when you add all these values, you'll be able to get 100. Then because they wanted mean, we need a column of x and fx. So x is the midpoint. You say this plus this divided by 2 to come up with that. This plus this divided by 2, get 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 that. And this plus this divided by 2, you get that. The next is the column of fx. Fx means that you are going to multiply values of f with x. So this times this gives you that. This times this gives you. 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 And this times this gives you that. So you have to add all these values to come up with a total, which is 6312.5. Then next, because they wanted the ogive, we have to put the column of cumulative frequencies. So this 5 is put here. Then this 5 plus this gives you 20, which is that. Then 20 plus this gives you 30, which is that. 30 plus this gives you 45, which is that. 45 plus this gives you 70. 70 plus this gives you 95. 95 plus this gives you 100. So we have finished our table. Next is to answer the questions. So the first question was calculating the mean mark. So the formula for mean is also there in the mathematical logbook. So mean is equal to summation of fx over summation of f. Now summation of fx is that, summation of f is that, so the end will come up with 63.125. So before I go to the next slide, let's see marks for this slide. So B1 for these values and B1 for these values, M1 for this substitution, A1 for this output. So part B, they wanted you to draw an ogive. So let's draw an ogive. For an ogive, you need a graph paper. Then after the graph paper, you are going to plot to draw the axis. So the horizontal axis, vertical axis, then label the axis. Using a good scale, you put those values. And also for the vertical axis, using a good scale, you'll be able to get those values. And then you label the axis. Now after that, you remember that for the ogive, we plot here upper class boundaries and cumulative frequency. So you shall come here and look for these values. So the upper class boundaries are these ones, and the cumulative frequencies are these ones. That means that 40 will correspond with 5, 50 will correspond with 20, 55 corresponds with that, this corresponds with this, this corresponds with that, this corresponds with this, and this corresponds with that. So those are the pairs we are going to plot. So let's do that. So 40 is that, then 50 is that, 55 is that, 60 is that, 70, then 90, then 100 is that. Then from there we have to draw a reasonably smooth curve, and the curve must pass through all these points, and it has to be very smooth. So let's do that. So it has to be as smooth as possible, and what you should remember is that it shouldn't be left hanging. So it has to start, this line from here has to be elongated backwards to reach the lower class boundary of the first class, not that lower class boundary of the first class. So you have drawn the ogive, but they want you to use it to get the median mark and the range of the middle 40%. So let's start with the median mark. For you to get the median mark, you have to first get the median position. So we shall come here and get our median position first. So median position is a half n, which is a half times 100. N is total frequency, so which is the 50th. Therefore, I'll come here and look for 50, draw a horizontal line on 50 where it meets the curve, take it downwards to meet this point, then read off that value, and that will be your median. So we shall come here and conclude that the median is 61.5. Then when you go back, they also wanted the range of the middle 40%. Now when you see this word percent, means that we are now in percentiles. So which percentile are we interested in? So for you to know the percentile, you can make a small sketch. So we are going to make a small sketch. Let me explain that sketch. Percentile, remember, moves from 0 up to 100. And the midpoint is P50. So at the midpoint, remember they said the middle 40%, so you come at the midpoint and divide this 40% into 2. So 20 goes this side and 20 goes this side. That's what gives you the middle 40%. But remember, it was divided into 2, meaning that the whole of this is 50 and the whole of this is also 50. What does that mean? It means that this remaining part will be 50 minus 20, which is 30, and also this remaining part will be 50 minus 20, which is 30. So now that we have got that, it means that from here up to here will be P30, and also from here up to here will be what? It will be 30 plus 20 plus 20, which is 70, therefore it is P70. Now what do we learn from that? It means that the middle 40% is the 30th to 70th percentile range. Therefore, you have to know to get the 30th percentile position, which is 30, and also the 70th percentile position, which is 70. So when you get that, we shall go back to our ogive and be able to locate those values. So this value, get 30, take it to this mid the curve, take it downwards to meet this point, then read off this point, and it will be the 30th percentile. Do the same for the 70th percentile and read off that value to be the 70th percentile. So let's first see how marks can be awarded for this part. So B1 for the axes well labeled, B2 for plotting all points correctly, and B1 for the reasonably, note this word, reasonably smooth curve. So the curve must be reasonably smooth. So now that we have got P30 and P70, we shall go back and be able to substitute to get the middle 40% range. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how marks can be awarded. So A1 for you to get the median, but the estimation lines must be seen on the ogive. Then B1 for you to identify this middle 40% range. M1 for this subtraction, and A1 for the output, but the estimation lines have to be seen. So that was question 10. Now we shall go to question 11, which says two bodies A and B of masses 3 kilograms and 2 kilograms respectively are 7 meters apart on a smooth horizontal surface. Smooth means there's no opposing force. A is moving directly towards B with a speed of 2 meters per second and an acceleration of 0.3 meters per second. B is moving in the same direction as A with a speed of 5 meters per second and a retardation of 0.2 meters per second squared. If the bodies collide and coalesce, coalesce means they stick together. Calculate part A, the time taken before collision occurs, and part B, the common velocity immediately after collision. So shall start with part A. Remember, for body A, the mass is 3 kilograms, initial speed is 2 and acceleration is 0.3. So shall come and use that information here. Let B move a distance x before collision. That means that A will have moved a distance x plus 7 because they were 7 meters apart. Therefore, the distance moved by A is x plus 7. Initial speed is 2. Acceleration is 0.3. T is not known. So that gives us equation 1. Then for body B, the distance moved was x. So distance x, initial speed is 5. Acceleration is 0.2. But remember, it was a retardation. That is why there is a minus here. Therefore, that gives us equation 2. Now, before we go to the next slide, let's see marks for this. So, B1 for equation 1, B1 for equation 2. Now, these are 2 equations and 2 unknowns, so you have to solve simultaneously. So, substituting, this is not equating, we are going to substitute equation 2 into equation 1 to come up with that. Then we simplify to get a quadratic of t, solve it using either factorization or bulldozer method, but the easiest one is bulldozer method. So to get 2 values of t, then we conclude that t cannot be equal to -2, so there should be negative here. T cannot be equal to -2, implying that t is equal to 14. Then for part B, you have to get the velocities at the point just before collision. So just before collision, the time that has elapsed is 14 seconds. Therefore, the velocity at that point is u plus at, which is 6.2 for body A, and for body B, the velocity is 2.2 meters per second. So now we can use the condition for conservation of momentum and substitute for m VA, m VB, m 1mb, and v, which is the one they want. So when I make v the subject, I'll be able to come up with the velocity they wanted. So m1 for equating, not equating but substituting, then b1 for the quadratic equation, m1 for solving, b1 for both values, a1 for conclusion, b1 for this velocity, b1 for this velocity, m1 for this substitution left hand side and right hand side, a1 for the output. So now we shall go to question 12, and question 12 says a certain football team has 3 matches to play. The probabilities of winning the first, second and third matches are this, and that respectively. Find part A. Find the probability that the team wins Roman 1 exactly 2 matches, Roman 2 all the matches, Roman 3 no match. Then part B, if a random variable x is defined as the number of matches won. Part A, construct a probability distribution table for x, and part B, calculate the expected expectation of x. So we shall start with part A. So exactly 2 matches, it means that you can win the first and second and lose the third, or you win the first and third, you lose the second, or you win the second and third, you lose the first. So when you substitute, we shall come up with that and simplify to come up with this probability. Then for winning all matches, it means that you win first, second and third, so you come up with that probability. Then winning no match, you lose the first, second and third, so you come up with 24 over 125. So this M1 is for these individual probabilities, and then M1 for adding the probabilities, A1 for the output. This M1 is for this substitution, A1 for the output, substitution, output. So now we shall go to part B, which says that if a random variable x is defined as the number of matches won, Roman 1, construct a probability distribution table for x, and Roman 2, calculate the expectation of x. So you have got the one of x equal to 2, x equal to 3, and x equal to 0. We don't know yet x equal to 1. Therefore x equal to 1 will be the complement, so it will be 1 minus these other probabilities, which is 58 over 125. Therefore we can now tabulate our probabilities. So we have column of x and column of corresponding probability. When x is 0, probability is that. When x is 1, probability is that. When x is 2, probability is that. And lastly, when x is 3, probability is that. So basically that is the probability distribution table. Now we shall go to part B, where they want the expectation. So expectation, you multiply this with this to give you that, this with this to give you that, this with this to give you that, this with this to give you that. When I simplify, I'll be able to come up with my expectation as 1.2. So basically that is what they wanted. So B1 for that, B1 for tabulating these values, M1 for these multiplications all, and another M1 for adding all the terms, then A1 for the output. So there are some books which I recommend students to have. For this math paper 2, I recommend this book, Mastering L of Mathematics Part 2. It contains all the notes, mechanics, statistics, probability and numerical methods. I also recommend math paper 1, this book, which has all the content, algebra, geometry, calculus, trigonometry and vectors. Then I also recommend this question bank, which has questions from 2020 up 1988, arranged topical and with answers. Then for physics, I recommend this book for paper 1 and this for paper 2. For O level, I recommend this for senior 1 and senior 2, and this for senior 3 and senior 4. For sub math, I recommend that, and for O level math, I recommend that. So in case you want any of those books, you can contact the author on these 2 contacts. So that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and be reminded the next video will now be on subsidiary math of beginning of term 1 exam, still for the same school. So if you have not yet subscribed, please click on the subscribe button below this video so that you can receive updates when the next video on subsidiary mathematics has been uploaded. And also, if you know of any student who is not yet on this platform, please share the link of this video with them via social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp, so that you can all benefit as a family.